This is not a mukbang or anything like it. It is me eating some instant noodles while I talk to you. I want to talk a little bit about wellness at work, and to be clear, I am kind of eating my lunch as I do this, so there might be some like awkward jump cuts because I'm eating these wonderful like instant pho noodles, and they're really good when they're hot, but as soon as they fully cool off, they're not so good, but they take a really long time to cool off, and I really just want to like get what's on my mind on this topic out right now. So there's a lot of stuff out there about, the intersection of wellness and work, and the importance of work-life balance, and the importance of, psychological safety and mental fortitude in a stressful workplace. And I don't want to repeat anything that's already been said by other people. What I want to focus in on is that feeling of when our body isn't allowing us to do the amount of work that we want to do. Okay? And this can come from an actual illness, chronic disease, pain, things that are unexpected, getting, infection after infection. But it can also come from being in a really difficult environment. There's a lot of power that other people and our workplace has over our health and our immune system. But, if you're an ambitious person, if you're a perfectionist, if you really put your all into your work and you take pride in your work, when you are unwell, when you have desires or ambitions that go beyond what your body can currently accommodate, you can feel like you're just getting knocked down, or like you're going in circles, or you can feel really aimless, or like you have a lack of focus. And that's just the internal piece, right? There's also the practical aspects of this, like if you have a workplace that promotes psychological safety and work-life balance or not, if you have a flexible sick leave policy or not, or if your organization is up to date on what workplace accommodations can look like, that can make a huge difference. So to sort of put my my skin in the game here, I suffer from chronic migraine, and I've had chronic migraine since I was 4. And I used to miss so much school to the point my parents would have to like often prove that I had migraine because, at some point when you miss enough school, they can like call CPS on you, right? You have to go for a judge. And so when I entered the working world, I was missing a lot of work. And I had workplaces where this became a huge issue, and I was seen as unreliable and not showing up. But I also had workplaces that were different, that offered me a lot of accommodations, that were supportive. And guess which companies I worked at that I got promoted and advanced, and I was a high performer and like doubled my salary in 3 years. It is really hard already for us to experience the confines of being unwell. And to look at those boundary markers and to see it as a womb and see a promise that we are going to be reborn, that we are going to get well, that there is a version of us that's going to come out of it. If the environment that we're in or the people that we work with don't see that too, if they don't trust that we are able to be healed, beyond just my own issue with chronic pain, I had a colleague who got cancer, and luckily the workplace that we were at was amazing at the time and just allowed him unlimited sick leave to deal with that without any effect to his salary. And he healed and he came back. And the cancer came again. And, the difference that it made to have that salary there for his family, to have those accommodations there, really mattered. And, not just the health insurance, right? But being able to have a family be supported. There are organizations, there are companies, there are leaders who do think this way, who do lead with accommodation, who do lead with inclusion, who do lead with a belief in your health being important. But, that's not the majority. We do have a systemic problem around this where we're expected to leave our well-being at the door, whether it's cancer or chronic pain or mental health. And for ambitious people, for people who do love work, who do like to be in teams and to solve problems and to work on projects, who feel very much themselves and in their element in the workplace when they're well, those confines of unwellness can just create this sense of, I'm unable to share myself, right? To feel like my gifts, my skills, my energy, I can't give it. And that is so frustrating. And so that rest is uncomfortable. The rest that your body is demanding is incredibly uncomfortable. It doesn't feel like rest at all. It feels like a punishment. And I think when we think about our careers in like a longer context, if you have an illness that does sort of knock you down on a regular basis, like autoimmune issue or mental health issue or chronic pain, it's like It's like you're being left on the sidelines of a battle for your reputation and your career progression and for your future, and you don't get to wield a weapon on a regular basis. You might get tapped in for a few months and then you might get tapped out, and it's like, how am I supposed to show up for myself if I keep getting knocked down? So I want to share a few thoughts on what you can do about it. I have 4 ideas that I want to give that I don't think are super conventional, and I hope they support you. I hope they help. I promise these might sound ridiculously simple. These might sound really, really simple, but I promise, just stick with me, okay? It would not be a Work Witch video if I wasn't getting like a little too philosophical about the mundane, okay? First, I want you to eat fresh fruit or a salad if you're not into fruit outside. If you can't do this on your lunch break, that's okay. Maybe do it after work when the weather's nice, do it on the weekends. I think that there is a really interesting thing that happens when we show up into the elements and have something that is fresh, like fresh produce, and we allow the wind to sort of hit our mental space and carry our thoughts away. When we engage with like nature's bounty of like very fresh foods that are sweet and full of water that get our system moving, when we are sort of allowing ourselves to be cold if it is cold, to be hot if it is hot, sort of that the essentialness of that sort of survival instinct of what, you know, our humanity evolved from, of going out into nature and retrieving sustenance and eating it in the elements, not always taking it back into a shelter, right? I think there is sort of this very primal survival thing that happens, but it's not survival in the sense of I have to work hard for it. It's survival in the sense of I'm part of this system. My thoughts are with the wind. My body is with the nutrients and these foods, and the waters that I consume comes to my emotions and helps reduce my stress and carry me. And I think having sort of a sense of the details of these experiences and increasing your awareness of your physical, spiritual, mental form and the physical, spiritual, mental, mostly physical states of the natural world, that elemental engagement, I think it builds empathy for yourself. I think it builds empathy for the fact that you are this biological being with these spiritual, mental, creative faculties and dimensions. And to give yourself grace, to give yourself, you know, the expectation is I want you to take the time you need to be well. The same grace and love that you would extend a colleague who's suffering from cancer, giving that to yourself, whether it is a burnout or whether it is anxiety or it is chronic pain or it is an autoimmune disease or it is anemia, like whatever it is that has you maybe scared or frustrated with your body. Becoming aware, allowing yourself to be more aware of that form and all of the effects and all of the wholeness of you, I think nature can do that for you. So have a meal outside. Go have a salad on the veranda. Look at the sun. Look at the clouds. Watch the other people around you. Drink the glass of water slowly. My other thing that I want to suggest is art therapy or a creative practice. So I, again, don't want to repeat anything that's already out there. You can definitely look into this yourself. There are wonderful resources on sort of, what is the word for when you're not religious or not spiritual? Not atheist, but like totally accessible to anybody versions of this. But because, I expect you, whoever's watching this, to be a bit more on the spiritually witchy inclined side, I'm going to focus on that. And kind of similar to what I was talking about earlier about like engaging with your body as a physical form and building empathy for that, art therapy is all about witnessing your wounds and allowing yourself to begin to care for them, begin to heal them, begin to engage with them by witnessing them first and pouring that process into something creative and constructive that you feel is really yours and is an expression that comes outside of you, giving it that release. If you're a magically inclined individual, if you're an enchanted person, I want to suggest a couple ideas for you. The first is sigil creation. Maybe you're already into sigils, maybe not. Personally, I wasn't a sigil person until I needed it for this. I love making sigils when I am in the throes of a migraine because it allows me to sort of process what I'm frustrated about, process the things that I'm yearning that I could be doing more of, the things that I appreciate. You know, sometimes I find it really hard to play with my kids when I'm focused on other things. Oh, I didn't realize my glass is really falling down. Sometimes I find it really hard to focus on playing with my kids because I'm thinking about all the other things I want to be doing, or the laundry needs to be done, or I want to cook, or da, da, da. And when I'm knocked down with a migraine, it's like I would give anything to go play with my kids, right? Like stuff like that comes up for me. And kind of representing those things into a sigil, and then having that sigil be something that I can engage with mentally when I'm not having a migraine helps me appreciate the present moment. So some other ways that you could use sigils, if you struggle with work-life balance, if you are an overachiever like myself, you could create a sigil that represents work-life balance to you. So what does that mean for you? What is it that you would have abundance of in your life, and abundance of in your work, and how your energy would be shared between those things, how they would create feedback loops, thinking and journaling a bit about that and creating a visual representation of that, and sticking it on your planner for your work. So every day when you get out your little planner, you see it. If you don't use a planner, maybe you could turn it into like a sticker or draw it on your MacBook, okay? If you struggle with imposter syndrome and you have maybe some really difficult stakeholders that sometimes just feel like they're gonna hurt you, you can put symbols or sigils in your work clothes. My first like real board meeting, I kid you not, I was flown to Manhattan, and I had to be in this like private equity space around all these like people who knew more than I did, and I had to like act like I knew what I was talking about. And I was so nervous. And so what I did for my outfits that I had brought is I literally drew Isis's throne in the tag of my clothes. So I felt like I was like wrapped by her, and like I had her to lean on. And she is obviously a very sovereign queen kind of goddess. She is the queen mother. She builds legacies. She is an authority. She is the wisest of them all, right? I wanted her in my corner, so I had her symbols in my clothes. So that's just like a silly example, but I think there's lots of different ways that you could use icons and sigils and symbology to connect you to like what your purpose is, to connect you to empathy for yourself, what your wider goals are, and to kind of engage with, to quickly engage with visually a very complicated, thick, heavy mental process that you've already gone through, right? Because you've already done all of the complicated work, all of the mind spirals and the voids of, and putting that into a visual thing where you can glance at it and like, oh yes, my brain has done this. We've done this route, and this is the conclusion I arrived to. I'm going to pull on that right now. So helpful. The other thing I would suggest is a writing practice. So, like spells, words are generative. We use words in our spell work very often. So you could write spells for your health, or for your healing, for your recovery, for setting better boundaries. But also you could write, but also you could sort of enchant your journaling. You could, write poems or phrases or mantras or affirmations, whatever your style is. You could really channel that writing practice into a coming for your health. And I think there's so many ways that you can go with this. One of my clients is currently unwell, and she's finding herself writing a lot more. And the way that she's sort of allowing herself to have this therapeutic connection to both the process of healing, but also her ambitions, is she's just going to be sharing them on LinkedIn. Like, even if they're not always perfectly work related or career related, like that's where she's sharing stuff to just keep herself connected to her own voice and her own self-expression, but also showing up sort of in this virtual container of professionalism and in our career growth. So that would be my second thing, is art therapy, creativity, engaging with it. The third thing, I've completely forgotten about my noodles. They're like kind of soggy now. They're still steaming hot. I've been recording this for 18 minutes and these are still piping hot, like almost burning my tongue. You can see why I was like, I'm not going to wait till I've eaten the noodles to make a video. I'm just going to do them at the same time. This is why. It's so hot. Okay, the next thing. Number 3, seeking help. Now, I mean this quite literally. Like, I'm looking at you. If you know that you've been unwell for a while, you need to seek help. You need to make those appointments. Okay, you need to call your doctor. You need to call your therapist. Or at least call your mom and like go home for the weekend, watch Lifetime movies, have some soup, hang out on the couch, whatever. You need to call someone. You need to take action. And I bring this up because even though it's been said before in many, many ways that seeking help, there's nothing wrong with seeking help. We all need to seek help. I want to challenge you to consider the fact that when you seek help, You are self-empowering, okay? Because you are trusting in a healing process is available to you. You're trusting in that healing process that you can access that healing process, that you can follow through with it and have an after, okay? When you just hope that things get better, that is way more disempowering than seeking help ever will be. I'm looking at my notes and I have no idea what I wrote here. I wanted to say next that, tapping into your willpower to make that appointment, to put yourself out there, to claim your healing is empowering. I still believe that. I agree with those notes. But what does this say? What does that say? We don't really know. We don't know what that says. Oh, different types of unwellness. Okay, so there are going to be different things you have to do for unwellness that comes from burnout or overextending yourself or overcommitting yourself. There's going to be unwellness that extends from feeling like you've bitten off more than you can chew. There's going to be unwellness that stems from feeling a little bit insecure in your relationships, maybe your marriage, maybe your friendships are fading away, and sort of that sort of unwellness on like, who am I and what's the value I bring and does anyone love me? All the way to, real like medical issues, things like heart disease, anemia, cancer, ulcers, chronic pain. And then there's, the blend of those two where there's a lot of mental health stuff going on, but there's also a lot of physical effects, things like, chronic depression and anxiety or bipolar disorder, right? Hormonal changes and issues. There's just this whole spectrum of possibilities of what kind of unwellness you're dealing with. And I think it's really tempting to like name one of them and stick with that as like, oh, it's because of the autoimmune disorder this is happening, or it's because of the autoimmune disorder that I'm feeling this way, or this is hard, or I'm feeling disconnected from this. And is that true? Probably. But instead of just focusing on the autoimmune issue and like solving that and hoping that the symptoms resolve, you also need to seek help on how those symptoms are hurting you and affecting you, right? So rather than just like solving for burnout, or solving for anxiety, or solving for the autoimmune issue, you should also be putting the willpower out to ask help for solving the, wow, this has made me feel completely uncomfortable in my own skin. I just want to throw out all my clothes. Wow, this has made me feel like I need to quit and go on disability. Wow, this has made me feel like I have no time for my friendships and I don't even know what that looks like anymore. I feel really hard. It's really hard for me to socialize. It's really hard for me to do my hobbies, right? You need to ask for help also for the symptoms. Does that make sense? And my last thing is, for the vast majority of people, we're going to be dealing with unwellness while still having to show up at work. I kind of touched upon this at the beginning about, every workplace is going to have different sick leave policies and accommodations available. And for a lot of you who I suspect live in the United States, it's even more like volatile on what that might look like, or the complete absence of those accommodations. Like one really crazy thing can be like if you have the kind of job that keeps you on call all the time, or if you have the kind of job that because you are paid so much, you're sort of expected to answer emails and phone calls any time of day, any day of the week. Or if you have the kind of job that you don't know what your schedule is next week until Friday at 7 p.m. So you can't commit to plans with friends and family, and you can't like be the director of your own life because it's all up to the schedule. But I want to offer you, if you're in that sort of situation where you're having to show up at work and you are unwell, I really want you to consider what your boundaries are and where you're willing to draw the line. It's so easy to let ourselves like just try and just push through and to kind of hope that we find a happy medium, or we hope that people sort of see what it is that we need and they give it to us, instead of just stating it outright. Stating it outright that I'm not able to have small talk right now, or I'm not able to look at a screen for that long. I'm not able to be on camera. Like stating what it is that we need, even if you can't say why, is so important. And stating what it is that we need is a grounding experience. Okay, it takes us away from that, oh, I don't know, the what if, maybe I could try, like that abstract space, that really fuzzy space, which just adds to our stress and puts us into the, no, this is what I need. This is where my body is at. This is who I am. These are my boundaries. We need to be connected to that. And if you're having a hard time finding what those boundaries are, I would really suggest just two quick things. One would be spacing out your meetings intentionally, giving yourself more time in between them than you currently have. So if you're currently doing meetings that run over into each other, try to add 5 to 10 minutes between. If you currently have 5 to 10 minutes between, try to stretch that to 15, 20, or even a half hour. Give yourself recharge time, and then use that recharge time to do some basic grounding exercises. They can be just breath work. They can be, a massage gun on your head. That's what I use a lot of. They can be lighting a candle. They can be lighting an incense stick, having a cup of tea, stretching, going outside and getting some fresh air. Whatever it is that grounds you, whatever it is that allows you to have a reset, you need to prioritize access to that. When I'm healthy and doing well, I can do back-to-back meetings all day. I can be in meetings from 9 to 5:30 and have no problem and no complaints. Like, you will not see me on LinkedIn being like, oh my God, I had so many meetings this week. I hate talking meetings. I'm not that person. I can do meetings. I can do meetings all the time. But when I'm unwell, I need 15 minutes in between them just to stretch my body out, to hang upside down, to rub my scalp, to give my eyes a break, to stretch, just stretch, a lot of stretching, and to breathe fresher air. And I also can't do all day, really. But I need to know that, when my body is fighting something or dealing with something, it needs more rest than what it normally has. So seek that out at work, whatever that looks like. I know for some jobs, it can be really hard. Like if you're a teacher, for instance, and you're on, and you have all these kids, you need to be intentional about, okay, well, am I actually just going to be happy giving them a video at the end of class so I can have that 5 minutes of slight downtime, right? Or do I want to put them into pairs to do a thing for the last 15 minutes so that I can slowly recharge and wind down before the next class comes in? There's all kinds of things that you can figure out and do that work for you, but you need to name what you need and get creative about claiming it. Those are some of my thoughts about wellness at work. If any of this was interesting to you or helpful, or if any of these ideas resonated, I'd love to know. I am working on sort of a larger set of rituals, both witchy and just general good for you rituals, about that we can use kind of discreetly at work. I think there's a lot that can be said around incorporating a lot more witchcraft into our day-to-day life. I obviously touched on like sigils here, but there are other ones that I think could be powerful and useful depending on if you work remotely or if you work, again, like in classrooms, or if you work in a corporate office, whether you have a cubicle or a private office. Like, there's so many variables to what we can and cannot display. So, some of the suggestions that I initially had, I decided not to share in this video, around like anointing candles for health, or having certain icons or figures of healing beings and deities, having those on your table, keeping certain types of herbs or essential oils. Like, obviously all those things are good, and I do want to talk about them in the future, but this is more to be very general about what you can do if you have sort of a high stress, very flexible environment. Maybe you're on your feet all the time and you can't really have like deity statues and candles burning in your work environment. Like, not all of us have that privilege. And if you are a witchy woman and you are sick of the maiden and mother and crone like I am, I've been raging a bit about this for a very long time. I went ahead and created a guide to like 6 alternative frameworks that you could use to understand the cycles of your life in the context of your professional leadership and ambitions and career. It's totally free. You don't even need to give me your email. I will put the link down below. At the end of the guide, there's also some tips and ideas on creating your own that's going to work for you if Maiden Mother Crone is out and the ones that I offered aren't quite hitting. With all that, I hope you have a great week. I will see you on Monday, and don't let anyone treat you like shit. Bye!